Cinemigos, worldwide fans of the planet's hottest entertainment with an edge. I'm Jaime En Fuego, stoked to welcome you to my namesake program in a new decade. That's right, Enfuegotainment. You can just call me Fuego for short. And stoked to have you here for discussion about what is my favorite film of this new year and this new decade so far. And granted, we just finished January, so that's not really saying a hell of a lot. But goddamn, man, The Gentleman was awesome. Yeah, this film is so fun, such a rousing return to form for Guy Richie. So just to give some context about Guy Richie, he started out with doing a 20-minute short film that got backing for Lock, Stock, and Lock, Stock was fantastic. Snatch, maybe even better, you know? I mean, it's arguable, very kind of interchangeable kind of script in some ways, just, you know, switching out our main piece of desire, so to speak. But, you know, you get Brad Pitt and wacky performance in that one, and so it got more big-time acclaim for him. And, you know, then he gets married to Madonna, and he makes Swept Away, and he wins Worst Director, and, you know, all of that stuff, and he's just like, holy hell, I need to go back to my roots. And Revolver was okay, you know, not bad, but definitely nowhere near up to par with those previous two that I mentioned. And yet, I really liked Rock and Roll. I thought that one was pretty damn good. And then it's time to go mainstream, and it's time to just take a complete step away from this sort of stuff. And he did the two Sherlock Holmes movies, and he did, you know, Man from U.N.C.L.E., which I really enjoyed. King Arthur, this Arthur film of his that he did with Jude Law, and I think Cunham was in that one, if I'm not mistaken, as well, who's also in this. That's his only film that I have never seen aside from the aforementioned collaboration with his wife. And yeah, a lot to surprise the hell out of a lot of people, but I guess after all of that really, really mainstream, like Hollywood-esque fare, he was probably itching to get back to making this sort of stuff where he balances the brutality and the hilarity so impeccably. And it's something he still has a knack for, obviously, you know? I mean, writing the screenplay, directing the hell out of this film. So before I get too far into all of this, I'm going to just say that here on Enfuegotainment, if you're new to the proceedings, we always do BUENO, MALO, and FEO. Yes, that's my grade school Espanol silly trope that I approach all of this with. So yes, good, bad, and ugly. And BUENO, if I always like to start out with, unless a movie was just so abundantly bad, I always have to start with the good. And this one, it's there in spades, man. I mean, the casting is top-notch. The chemistry amongst all of these actors in their respective scenes, it's terrific, you know? It's just genuinely fun, you know? It's odd how I don't really get super into a lot of the mobster, gangster, crime type films of this nature on my side of the pond, but yet Layer Cake, and you know, with Matthew Vaughn being a protege of Guy Ritchie's anyway, you know, stuff like Layer Cake and this, The Gentleman, and you know, pretty much all of this sort that that Guy has done before, that this fucking guy has done previously, you know. I just love that sort of stuff, though. It's really weird how that works, but there's a very specific tone and a balance, as I mentioned just a little while ago, to these type of films for him. And the story is also, aside from, you know, this great cast that, you know, features Matthew McConaughey in a surprisingly compelling, tolerable role. He was in my two most reviled films last year, you know, that being Serenity and Beach Bum. Fuck those movies. They are absolute garbage, but he's pretty good in this, actually, and he's better than good, you know, he's quite compelling, and yet, you know, he kind of serves his role as this pot-growing and, just patriarch, you know, that has, this stranglehold over, you know, pretty much the entirety of the UK. He's grown his White Widow, he has all of his little satellite slots all across the, you know, across the entirety of the islands and stuff, and, but yet, you know, the rest of his supporting cast, Charlie Hunnam, most notably, and he has a ton of scenes with Hugh Grant, who's also terrific in this, you know, and, you know, Colin Farrell playing as Irish could be, and all of the other supporting players. I mean, yeah, it's terrifically cast, you know, and yet, I mean, unless they had great material to put forth, you know, to just hilarious quips and just, you know, bonkers scenarios to encounter and twist after twist, double cross after double cross. The script keeps you guessing continually, and yeah, there's certain twists that I guess I could classify as MALO and possibly will. You're just like, oh, okay, you know, the film starts with something that I'll get into where I did not think they were going to follow through with that. We'll get to that. But yeah, it's also beautifully filmed, and the one thing that Guy Richie has always been very about is his stylistic approach, and I appreciate the hell out of that. Some may say he's kind of a British Michael Bay in some ways, you know, where they would say he over-directs this, and I'm sure some might say he over-directed this, especially with a story within a story element that we get, you know, throughout this that I was kind of surprised by, it was a genuinely pleasant surprise though, and it only made the film even more interesting, and especially early on it does allow for a couple just visual stylistic cues, you know, that we're just like, man, this guy really knows what he's doing from that particular standpoint and approach. And I don't know, I could go on really because I don't find a lot of bad in this movie. I really don't. I mean, yeah, MALO, jump into that at least briefly. I guess, yes, some of the twists, you know, you can see a mile away, but yet it does, for everything that you can kind of totally, you know, just say, okay, yeah, they're trying to get me to believe one thing is going to happen, and yet I know this is going to happen instead. There's others that take you completely off guard. So, yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, I guess this isn't the type of film that everybody is going to enjoy. You know, some people want things to be like super brutal, or they want things to just be funny throughout, and yet I love the straddling of the line that we get with this sort of thing. But yes, I guess that is another bad that could potentially be put forth, is the fact that, you know, this sort of film and its aggressive yet regressive tone at times, you know, some may be just off-put by that sort of, you know, I don't know, trying to balance and the juggling act that it entails, but I think it's done very, very well, and there's not really a lot of bad that I can say. Once again, it's tough for me. I'm kind of grasping at straws, as I all too often say in this program, where I was just so enamored with the film and just having such a goddamn blast with it that it's even tough, you know, as I was having to drive home with my lady and we were discussing it a little bit, I was trying to process certain aspects, and I was just like, there's not a lot that I can really just pick this film apart about. It's extremely difficult, and for me, this borders, it's like almost neck and neck with Snatch as far as kooky characters and odd scenarios that we find ourselves in, and it's very British though. And just to just circle back to that before I jump into Feo and the Ugly, is that this humor isn't going to be for everybody either. And I guess that is where I can easily segue into the Feo, is that it's rather vulgar, you know, and that will be off-putting for some. The frequent use of the big C word, you know, but, you know, calling someone a cunt, and it has different connotations and meaning across the pond. It 100% does, as all of my friends from the UK that I've met through, you know, YouTube, and also, you know, just people that I've met in person, they have constantly doubled down on that fact that, oh, you Americans, you're so goddamn prissy about, you know, just the way you look at the word cunt, man. And yeah, it's, but also in that regard, I could see it being considered ugly, and I saw this from certain critics in the fact that they're like, oh, there's certain jokes like, you know, this fuck, you know, whatever, fuck it, it's funny. These are unsavory individuals, and if you don't think they're going to take the occasional racial swipe at each other and hit below the belt, you're insane, and you want to have your cake and eat it too, and you want violent storytelling, and yet you don't want stuff that's going to accurately portray how these people probably interact with each other? Are you bonkers? Like, what world do you live in? That is ugly, that you want to fashion entertainment to your own just hot topics and, you know, just red flag things that bother you. Yes, there is there is insults against, people of the Far East. There is insults against, Jewish people in this. But it's... You watch something like The Irishman, which everybody praises the hell out of, and there's very colorful language for specifically African Americans. So you can't really just, praise the hell out of one and then damn the other. And, I always like to, at least if I can throw it out there, have a bueno feo, something that was so ugly it was just amusing to me. There are a few sequences of extreme violence, and yeah, maybe that is a bad that I forgot to mention, is that there were probably people who, based on some of the previous Guy Richie stuff, expected this to be more ugly violent than it actually was. I still thought it was, it was incredibly effective. Maybe it's not as excessive as we've seen in prior regard, but, not every Tarantino movie is going to be Pulp Fiction, and not every Guy Ritchie crime-based film is going to be Snatch or Lock, Stock, and yet this was still in the same spirit, and there are just some really amusingly ugly situations that characters find themselves in this film. Certain standoff segments, certain segments where, they're a little in over their heads and they have to just really just riff on stuff, play it by ear, and work right off the cuff to survive and get themselves out of these sticky situations. And there's one at a drug addict's house that entails, things going a little awry, and there's a chase, and it's some of the most ugly, hilarious, yet oddly British music in this chase sequence with like weird upbeat horns and percussion and kids chanting strange stuff in a language that I'm not even 100% of it was English. I don't know. It was just such a cacophony of crazy that I struggled to comprehend it. But it just, that scene alone epitomizes the silly spirit of this film so succinctly, and I love this movie. I am going to give this 4 out of 5 Fuego Fireballs. This is definitely #ThatShizzle, a certified Fuego film. So yes, I've been Jaime En Fuego. Y'all can find Wah on all social media sectors like Twitter and Instagram, Facebook, here on YouTube. Yes, thus far in 2020, there's not an immense amount of coverage from me. I did really enjoy Bad Boys for Life. This kind of blew that one out of the water as far as enjoyment for me, but that one was a big surprise. This one, I think I went in with much higher expectations because of the track record of Guy Ritchie making this sort of film, and so my expectations were a lot loftier, and yet it still delivered, whereas I went in with lowered expectations for Bad Boys for Life, and yet that movie is a ton of fun too, a hell of a lot, so check out my review of that on here. Also, tons of Star Wars coverage from last year as we approached Rise of Skywalker. More of that is going to be coming as we approach the Disney Plus series. I reviewed all the Mandalorian episodes. I have segued into a different galaxy far, far away with coverage of the new Picard show. That is on CBS All Access. Just put up the second episode of that review. But yes, if you're on here, you probably know me predominantly from The Horror Show. That's right, youtube.com/The Horror Show channel. As you see it spelled below, we do at least 1 review a day. Sometimes 2, but not just reviews, man. I mean, just videos of all varieties. We do trailer reactions, we do unboxings, we do video game Let's Plays. We have a news segment we do every month, recapping the biggest stories of the previous 28 to 31 days, depending. We try to make it as comprehensive as possible. We know we're probably not the best horror YouTube channel out there, but we do our damnedest to be the most prolific. And lastly, every Monday evening, most of the time, I am a part of a program on the Willis Greedia YouTube channel called Show Business, along with CP, the showrunner over there, and Lindsay Mimsy, my homeboy from My 2 Cents of Nonsense. The show has been having to migrate around a little bit after all of the time on the Willis Greedia channel. It was on Lindsay's channel. It might show up on my channel. YouTube jail is a tough son bitch, but yeah, just keep an eye out to all of our 3 different social media spots just to get updates on what channel and stuff like that. But it's a show that I quite enjoy. Usually though, Mondays 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, live, discussing weekend box office numbers, making predictions to the one ahead, and having lastly palaver about the biggest entertainment stories of those last 7 days. So I've been Fuego, y'all have been Rad Status, and until the reel of Ka comes around once more, I shall say hasta luego, cinemigos, and constant readers and viewers alike, but I am hopeful that we get to share more of this film discussion sooner rather than later. And until then, piss off.